Ancient Greece had many groups of people, from the early civilizations of Minoans and Mycenaeans to later city-states of Athenians and Spartans, so it can be difficult to differentiate between them. Then, of course, if you add mythology, it gets even more complicated. Who and what was real, and what information are we basing this on? Today, we will be talking about the first Europeans with a written language, the Minoans. I'm Laura Taylor, and here with me, as always, is Andrew Hook.
Hello.
Welcome to Digging Deeper with the Ancients. Today we're heading back over to Europe and the first advanced civilization there, the Minoans. If you've never heard of them, you aren't alone, as most people I've talked to only know the mythology related to them.
Yeah, which would be like the Minotaur, mostly,
Yes.
Right? Okay.
This episode will be a combination of what we've done in previous episodes, since it covers both archaeology and mythology. First, I'll cover the archaeology and details about the civilization and the area they were located as a whole, and what exists of them today. Then I'll go into the mythology, since most people only know of them through the tale of the Minotaur.
So we're going back to Europe.
Yep.
First one was in Pompeii, which was Italy.
Yep.
So now we're kind of just moving over a little bit and going over to Greece.
Yes, it's modern-day Greece. At the time, it wasn't Greece, though.
Okay.
I'll get into that a little bit.
All right.
What I find most interesting about this is that the mythology led to the archaeology.
Okay, so mythology led to the archaeology.
Yes.
Not archaeology leading to finding the mythology.
Well, the myths of this civilization and this Minotaur labyrinth, the whole thing, led to people trying to dig where it was supposed to be.
Okay.
And they found a civilization.
All right. So it wasn't just a farmer digging a well finding things.
No, it wasn't this time. The Minoan civilization existed between 3000 and 1100 BC and were primarily located on the modern Greek island of Crete in the Aegean Sea. For reference, although the island of Crete is one of the largest islands in the Mediterranean, it measures only about 200 kilometers wide and between 12 and 58 kilometers from north to south at its narrowest and widest distances.
So it's just a small island.
But it's the biggest in the Aegean Sea.
But this entire civilization was just on this tiny little island.
Not quite. They did expand. They did expand later on.
All right. But this is where most of the mythology takes place, is on this island. Okay.
Yes. The Minoan name is derived from the ruler Minos, which was either the name of the ruler or the title given to them, like emperor or king.
Right.
Minos has also been placed in Greek mythology, but we'll cover that later. So one thing is it Minos? Is it Minos? Is it Minoan or Minoan? You'll notice that I say King Minos, but the Minoans, it's confusing. And everybody says it differently.
I've heard Minotaur and Minotaur.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It doesn't really matter. Nobody knows for sure how it was said.
There's no wrong way to say things.
Exactly.
Unless you're saying them wrong.
The term Minoan is relatively modern, with a 19th century origin that was applied to the mythology and then the archaeological sites after evidence of a real civilization was discovered at the city of Knossos on the island of Crete by Sir Arthur Evans in 1900. When Evans first excavated the palace, he believed the Minoan people had migrated from Egypt because the artifacts he discovered at the palace of Knossos had more in common with the style of long-lost civilizations than the mainland Bronze Age Greeks of the time. Evans also discovered thick-walled circular tombs that bore a resemblance to those of ancient North Africans, as well as scripts dubbed Linear A and hieroglyphics similar to the Egyptians. Unfortunately, neither the Linear A scripts nor the hieroglyphics have ever been deciphered.
So we don't have a Rosetta Stone for these guys yet?
No, we don't.
All right.
Many archaeologists have disagreed with Evans' assessment that the Minoans were descendants of Egyptians, but until recently, there was no solid evidence against his theory. Recently, ancient DNA discovered from the caves on the island of Crete suggests that the Minoan civilization emerged from early farmers who settled the island thousands of years earlier, around 7000 BC, and these farmers came from the area that is modern-day Turkey. Yes. The Minoans were a trade-based nautical civilization. Obviously, since they were on an island, they were nautical-based. They were also the first advanced civilization in Europe, as well as the first Europeans to have written language. Many of the writings appear to be inventory or sales records on simple clay tablets, although they haven't been deciphered. The civilization exported wheat, olives, cloth, wine, and oils. They were a unique, sophisticated culture unlike any the ancient world had seen, primarily because they were based around trade rather than any sort of production or agriculture. So they had agriculture, but it was primarily for export, like wheat, olives, wine, and oils. I mean, that's all agriculture, but it was mostly for
especially
trade.
if it's a small island with how many people were there approximately? Let's say there was 2,000 people on this island. And if they're making wheat and olives, they're not all going to eat that. They have to send it off. And what's a better way to make some money or get some other stuff but for trade?
It's true. They only had so much on the island, too, so... Early Minoan civilization had no centralized authority, and early palaces were focused around communities. The other architectural structures were circular tombs that indicate the society had no hierarchy, which is kind of interesting that they had palaces that everybody could live in. Okay. Theoretically, this is the idea.
So there's no hierarchy, but there's a King Minos or...
Not yet.
Okay.
This is early civilization.
So this is before. Okay, so they had giant houses that were kind of communal.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, this is early times.
Okay. So this is leading up to the mythology stuff.
Yes.
Got it.
This all changed around 2000 BC, when a new political system emerged with a centralized ruler, like a king, or president or queen, I guess you could say, but...
It all depends on it, whether they were voted in or just said, hey, I'm in charge now.
And since we can't decipher their writing, we don't actually know.
Right.
About the same time, distinctions between classes forged a social hierarchy and divided people into nobles, peasants, and possibly slaves, although there's a lot of debate around whether the Minoans even had slaves, because there's very little evidence, although it was very common. Like, pretty much everyone around this time had slaves. So it would be unusual, but the Minoans were a little unusual. And it was also around this time that the Minoans built huge, extravagant maze-like palaces. They always had, they were always building palaces, but now they were more extreme and very maze-like, which is what they're known for.
Yes, well, that's where a lot of the mythology goes towards.
That's where the idea of the Minotaur in the labyrinth comes from, is their maze-like palaces. The Minoan palaces provided a forum for gathering and celebrations, while at the same time they offered storage for crops and workshops for artists. So, not like what we think of palaces today. We're talking still a very public area.
Mm-hmm.
Not like they are today. The palaces were built over time and occupied low hills at strategic places around the island in a manner so complex that they resembled labyrinths to the outside visitors. The Minoan palaces were technologically advanced with expanded drainage systems, irrigation, aqueducts, and deep wells that provided fresh water to inhabitants. Now this is long before, this is 2000 BC, long before the Romans did it or anything like that. The ones who are known most for aqueducts.
Right.
These are before, this is while most civilizations are still working with rock tools.
Bronze Age, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The multi-storied palace buildings were laced with impressive interior and exterior staircases light wells, massive columns, storage magazines, and outdoor gathering places, which would be the precursor to the ancient theaters. The Minoans were also gifted artists, and many scholars believe they may have loved art for its own sake, which is absolutely unheard of for ancient civilization.
Yeah, because it was normally, if you were drawing a picture, it's to tell a story about something that happened.
Yeah, it'd be for storytelling, religion reasons, or communication.
But
however,
since they actually had a language, they could actually make art.
Yes, I'm not saying they didn't also use it for other reasons,
yeah. Well,
but it's believed that
looking at some of the artwork that I've found, you can see that this is meant to tell a story.
Yeah. So they had numerous maze-like palaces spread throughout Crete, as well as art and decorative objects that can still be viewed to this day. There's a lot of museums, but even on Crete, there are still some of the structures that remain to this day.
So, unlike Pompeii, it wasn't covered by a volcano. It's actually still there, just old.
Well, but Pompeii, at least, like, they've uncovered a lot of it. You can still see. Mm-hmm. But you think about this is like, compared to the Olmec, and all that remains of them is those heads. There's not really anything.
Yeah, because they were made out of rock.
Yeah, but there's not really much else that remains because the jungle took it over. Mm-hmm. Well, Crete is fairly empty. So the palaces, there are still chunks of the palaces that remain.
And with it probably being a little bit less humid than in the middle of a jungle.
Yes. Unlike many ancient cultures, they didn't seem to have a lot of weapons for warfare. Most of the weapons they had were intricately decorated, and it's hypothesized were primarily for show. Many of the weapons found appear to have been used in religious ceremonies or as religious offerings, since they were found placed around temples, and some were carefully buried.
So they're more like a decorative guard.
Yeah, like we're talking very intricate, like bronze axes,
like the Swiss
gold.
Guard for the Pope.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like
he looks pretty, but
what
do they do with a spear?
Or the beef eaters, right? Yeah. They have those big fancy hats and stuff. Aren't really practical, but they look interesting to say the. Here's another odd thing about the Minoans, since they were an ancient civilization. Women were prominent in Minoan religion, far more than any other ancient religion. We know this because of the snake goddess statues that have been found and the prominence of priestesses in art. Some argue that the Minoans were a matriarchal society, with women outnumbering the men, which is why I mentioned that there could have been a queen. Mm-hmm.
And she took a husband, and his name was Minos. And then when they found stuff, they thought, well, the man was in charge because, patriarchal societies took over.
It's a possibility. I do like the interesting fact that women could have outnumbered the men.
Well, for ancient Greece stories, it's not unheard of because there's the Amazonians.
That's true. For ancient mythology, at least. But this isn't the mythology basis. This is the archaeology side of things still. Yeah. So, yeah.
Well, maybe this is where some of the Amazonian stuff also came in.
Could be.
Who knows? I don't know, that's for sure.
The Minoans also had an impressive paved road system connecting all of the palaces and towns on Crete. Now, they did expand their civilization over time to have colonies spread throughout the Aegean and beyond. This is one of the factors that led to the fall of their civilization.
They spread themselves too thin.
Because in later Minoan times, Greeks on the mainland were also starting to grow and expand. During this time, life on Crete became more militaristic. They were being challenged in their naval supremacy, and by the middle of the 15th century BC, most of the Minoan palaces and villages were destroyed. There is some evidence that some of the palaces were occupied by people arriving from mainland Greece because non-Minoan scripts have been found called Linear B. Now, these are considered the earliest form of the Greek language. But most of the villages and palaces were destroyed and abandoned for a long time.
Okay, so it seems like people from mainland Greece went out there and, conquered?
Well, they occupied at least some of the palaces after the Minoans left.
Oh, so
but we don't know
if they left or if they got...
that's what we're going to go into now, is what happened to the Minoans.
All right.
Now, there's a few different theories. The first one is that there was a volcano that erupted on the nearby island of Thera, which there was a Minoan civilization on the island at that time. Mm-hmm. And this would have been about the same time that the Minoan civilization fell. However, scholars argue about the exact year of the eruption.
Okay, here's my theory. Here's my theory. Okay. The Greek mainlanders went to Crete and kind of pushed them off the island. So they didn't destroy them. They just said, look, we're taking over this. Go away. And then they went to this other island where there was a volcano that wiped them out.
Well, they were already on the island of Thera. They had expanded to multiple islands.
Yes.
One of the problems with the volcano theory is that ice cores placed the eruption much earlier.
Oh.
Yes.
Well, then, scratch that.
A second theory is a combination of earthquakes and tsunamis. The area had a lot of earthquakes.
Which create tsunamis.
And yes, in 1700 BC, many palaces were destroyed by earthquakes and the fires that followed, but they were rebuilt with extra protection from earthquakes. So if they were so used to the earthquakes and they've rebuilt in the past, would that have taken them out for sure?
But if there was a big tsunami that came along, it could have just completely washed them off the island.
And it also depends on how their civilization was doing at the time, right?
Yeah, because if they were already down from being attacked, then...
Yep. Another theory is lack of resources on the island. It's not a very big island. Their population had boomed, and they were expanding. So that one kind of makes sense, because, especially if you look at modern Crete, is very empty. There's not a whole lot on the island. I mean, there's mountains, and there are some orchards and stuff like that, but they definitely couldn't have... Modern Crete could not support a big population on its own.
They'd have to bring in a whole bunch of other things.
Exactly. So I can see where that one's going. And then another one, which would be that they were invaded. Like you said, maybe they were pushed off the island. Maybe they were slaughtered. Who knows? But this is suggested because of the Linear B writing that was found in the palaces, as well as the destruction and the fact that they started becoming more militaristic around that time. Like, you found weapons that weren't as fancy.
Yeah, it's like there was a secondary thought. We got to start protecting ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. Like, because, mainland Greece was starting to spread, and so...
And they are warmongers.
Well, they were expanding, and, the Cretans didn't want to be in the way. But they kind of were.
Cretans.
Hey, it's true. Realistically, so my theory is that it's likely a combination of the environmental factors and the foreign invasion. Because, if they're already getting earthquakes, tsunamis, maybe the timing, like the volcano, maybe the timing of the Greeks coming, maybe it wasn't worth rebuilding.
Yeah,
maybe they just left.
A little bit of everything kind of makes everything go
and they did blend with the Greek society a little bit. Like, we do see influences from them, but whether that's them joining in, merging with the Greeks completely or not is unknown. It's unlikely. It's kind of like
how almost all humans have a little bit of Neanderthal.
Yeah, exactly. It's unlikely because the Linear B was so different. This writing was so different than what the Minoans had.
But maybe they said, okay, look, there's fewer of us. We'll learn your
Exactly. If they were completely taken over, their beliefs and everything could have been squashed completely. And as far as the influences that you see later on in Greek society and Greek art and stuff, that could have also been from trade. Right?
Yeah.
You see pretty things, you want to copy them. It's so.
And they were artists.
Yes, exactly. So all that remains of them today are some of the ruins of their palaces, like I said, most notably the palace at Knossos. There was some artifacts that were left behind, and the palace at Knossos is actually still painted. You can actually see, it's red. There's red, big red. I don't know if it's the wall or the column. I don't have a picture in front of me right now, but it's still very bright and obvious. As well as I found this kind of neat, that there is a 3,000 plus year old olive tree that still produces olives to this day. That they figure the Minoans, they would have been Cretans as well because they lived on Crete, but they figured that the Minoans had actually got olives off of as well. I thought that was kind of cool.
That is pretty cool.
So that is the civilization. Now, we've actually touched on the mythology a tiny bit, but now we'll go into the mythology more.
Yeah, which is what most people are going to know a little bit about.
Yes, exactly. Not necessarily a whole lot or the whole story, but that's where I come in.
I don't think I could find someone who hasn't heard of what a Minotaur is.
That's true. And judging by your list of references, yes, I would say it's unlikely. Yeah. That's for sure. So, first to note is that bulls were a huge part of Minoan culture and were everywhere. Horns adorned the top of shrines and likely decorated palaces. Great ceremonial axes of bronze and gold suggested the sacrificial slaughter of bulls were recovered, and objects such as sarcophagi show cattle trussed in preparation for sacrifice. In every medium imaginable, from gold rings to terracotta figures, from stone seals to frescoes, the image of the bull permeates the Minoan world. Combine this obsession with bulls and the maze-like palaces, and it's no wonder that the myth of the Minotaur is how most people have heard of this ancient culture. Now, what is a Minotaur?
Minotaur is a bull head on a human body.
Yes. It's a cross between a human and a bull.
Moo man.
So, the main myth surrounding the Minoans is about King Minos' rise to power. In Greek myth, Minos was one of 3 sons from the union of the Queen of Crete and Zeus, who had taken the form of a bull. I have no idea why. If he wanted to sleep with a human queen, why would he take the form of a bull? But that's gods for you. I have no idea.
No, so this is the mythology. So this is the Greeks giving this mythology.
Yes, sorry, this is the Greek myth.
Because obviously, if they weren't from Greece, they weren't probably worshipping Zeus at the time.
Yes, exactly. So this is a Greek myth.
Yeah.
And if the Greeks took over, conquered the Minoans, then...
They just said a god, so how about our god, Zeus? Because he likes to sleep with everybody anyway.
Yes. So the king of Crete looked over the boys as if they were his own. But when he died, it was unclear which of the 3 sons should become the next king. It was Minos, whose name in Cretan actually means king, who was fated to be king of Crete.
So he was king.
Yes, exactly. He claimed... Oh, hold on. The fact that his name is Minos, and that is where the archaeology comes up with the name for the Minoans, which is why they don't know if Minos was the name of the king or the title.
They are royalty.
Yeah.
All of them are royalty.
Yeah, exactly. It was Minos, whose name in Cretan actually means king, who was fated to be king of Crete. He claimed that he had the support and authority from the gods to rule, and he boasted that he could prove it by praying for whatever he wanted, and the gods would make it so. One day, while sacrificing to Poseidon, god of the sea, he prayed that a bull would appear from the depth of the sea. Minos vowed to heaven that he would sacrifice the bull to Poseidon once it appeared. Poseidon then produced a magnificent bull from the sea. Thus, Minos' claim to power was validated, for no one dared to defy the favor of the gods, let alone the mighty Poseidon, who ruled over all the seas, which...
Being an island. Yeah, you don't worship the seas.
Yeah, you don't want Poseidon mad at you.
Mm-hmm.
As a result of winning the throne, Minos banished his brothers from Crete. You don't want anyone challenging you.
Yes, you do.
However, King Minos did not fulfill his vow to Poseidon. He kept the majestic bull for himself and sacrificed a different one to the god. Angered by King Minos' disrespect, Poseidon plotted to punish him for his arrogance. Poseidon punishes Minos by instilling a passion within the king's wife for the bull that came from the sea.
Bow chicka bow wow.
Exactly. Driven by this passion, the queen sought the help of local craftsmen, Daedalus and Icarus. They constructed a wooden cow coated with a real cow hide and placed it upon wheels. then put the queen inside the structure and wheeled her into the meadow that her beloved bull grazed in. It was there that she met and laid with the bull, since the bull thought the cow was real. It is from this union that the Minotaur was born.
Well, Daedalus and Icarus are really known for making good things, unless they get too hot.
Yes. Upon seeing the infant, King Minos discovered his wife's bestial affair, and as punishment, Minos enslaved Daedalus and Icarus for their parts in the affair. He did not touch the queen. The queen cared for her son and was able to nourish him while he was young. However, as he grew, he became ferocious and monstrous, and she was unable to feed or care for him any longer. They were unable to find a suitable source of food, since he was neither man nor beast, and so he started to eat people.
As you do.
In order to hide his wife's disgraceful affair, and on the advice of an oracle, King Minos commanded Daedalus and Icarus to build a grand labyrinth to house the Minotaur. Now, while construction of the labyrinth was underway, King Minos discovered that his only human son had been killed by the Athenians. So he sailed against them and harassed them until they agreed to pay the price for his son's death. King Minos demanded that Athens pay a tribute of 7 maidens and 7 youths every 9 years, although there is a lot of contradiction of sources of how often they were sent. Anyways. However, according to another source, the murder of his son sparked a plague in Athens, and that the only way to cure the plague was to send these youths to Minos. Anyways, Theseus, son of King Aegeus of Athens, volunteered to be a tribute. He boasted to his father and to all of Athens that he would kill the Minotaur. He promised that on the journey home he would raise his white sails if he was victorious, or have the crew fly black sails if he failed and was killed. Upon reaching Crete, the daughters of King Minos fell deeply in love with Theseus, and they were unable to cope with Theseus being eaten by their half-brother the Minotaur. So prior to entering the labyrinth, they handed Theseus a ball of thread to help him find his way out of the labyrinth. Upon entering the labyrinth, Theseus tied one end of the string to the door and continued into the maze. He found the Minotaur and killed him. Now, unlike the labyrinth's previous victims, Theseus was able to find his way out thanks to the thread. So he finds and leads the other Athenians out of the maze and quickly sails off to Athens with both of Minos' daughters. On the journey home, he abandoned one of the girls on an island and marries the other. Theseus is overjoyed to be almost home with his new wife, and absent-mindedly forgets to change the color of his sails from black to white. His father, King Aegeus, seeing the black sails from afar, is overcome with grief and kills himself by jumping off a cliff into the sea. It is this act which secures Theseus' place as the new Athenian king and explains the origin of the name for the Aegean Sea. Mm-hmm. Now for my Mandatory Simpsons reference. In the Bart Simpson comic number 76, Milhouse imagines that he and Bart are the craftsmen Daedalus and Icarus, trying to escape the tower King Minos locks them in, so that they don't reveal to anyone how to escape the labyrinth, and as punishment for helping his wife mate the bull.
Right, okay.
It's a little reference, but it's still there.
It's there. That is a Simpsons reference.
The other major myth or legend regarding the Minoans is the lost city of Atlantis was Minoan. Now, this comes from the legend of Atlantis is logically linked to the Minoans, since cataclysmic floods and volcanic explosions have happened throughout history on the islands around Crete, including one that had some similarities to the story of the destruction of Atlantis. Now, at the time of that volcano that we talked about on Thera, the Minoans were a very highly advanced society, and the landscape of the island changed drastically due to the volcano. Then, of course, you have the fact that the Minoan civilization disappeared suddenly about the same time as that volcanic eruption. And that's, from what I can tell, that's basically where the legend comes from. That's why they link it to the Minoans. It's as good as any other theory. Exactly. Oh, and this brings I also have this mild, tiny reference that The Simpsons also have a reference to Atlantis in the Stonecutter song. Who keeps Atlantis off the maps? There you go.
Yeah, okay. That's a bit of a stretch. It's a bit of a stretch.
You're not funny.
Because they're not saying which Atlantis it is.
I could only link it to the mythology. It's not easy.
Yeah. So some of the references I found, one of the earliest that I've actually found is Dante's Inferno.
Oh.
It appears briefly in that book where Dante and his guide Vigil find themselves picking their way among boulders dislodged or on the slope, preparing to enter the seventh circle of hell. Dante and Virgil encounter the beast first among the men of blood, those damned for their violent creatures. Now, it doesn't actually say Minotaur, it says Infamia di Crete, which is Italian for infamy of Crete.
Oh, okay. So
it's like that. And the actual verse is, "My sage cried out to him, you think. Perhaps this is the Duke of Athens, who in the world put you to death. Get away, you beast, for this man does not come tutored by your sister. He comes to view your punishments." In these lines, Virgil taunts the Minotaur in an order to distract him. And then there's a bunch of surrealist art that show pictures of the Minotaur, including one done by Picasso. Pablo Picasso made a series of etchings in the Vollard suite showing the Minotaur being tormented, possibly inspired also by Spanish bullfighting. He also depicted Minotaur in his 1933 etching Minotaur kneeling over sleeping girl, and in his 1935 etching Minotauroctomy. Yeah.
So he kind of had a thing for.
Yeah, he liked man bulls, I guess. And and there's other art. Now there's a bunch of TV shows. I'm going to go over a few here, starting with, of course, Doctor Who. The Time Monster, which is set in the Bronze Age. Thera, the Minotaur, appears played by David Prowse, who is also Darth Vader. In the Doctor Who episode The God Complex, the Doctor, Amy, and Rory find themselves in a mysterious hotel with rooms and corridors that constantly change to form endless labyrinth, allowing the Minotaur trapped inside to hunt down one by one with their secret fears until they give in and are consumed. That was I do remember that episode. I really like that episode because it's kind of like a horror themed one. And now, there's a documentary called Room 237 that suggests that the film The Shining is a retelling of the myth of the Minotaur.
Oh.
Because the hotel itself seems to be like a labyrinth itself. And also in the movie, there is actually a labyrinth outside.
Yes.
So
yeah.
There's a Gargoyles episode called The New Olympians. A Minotaur named Taurus is a new Olympian security officer after his father was killed by the devious shape-shifting into liberating him from the island to freedom. He is stopped by Taurus and Alicia as a cooperating police figures to be re-imprisoned.
Elise,
I've never watched the show. It's your show. In the animated TV series Aladdin, a huge Minotaur named Dominus Tusk was killed by the Sultan and had his horns mounted as a trophy. There's also an episode of South Park with a Minotaur. There's a bunch of other shows. I'm not even really going to get into it because there's most of these things I've never heard of, but needless to say, there's a bunch of TV shows. Yeah,
I know the show The Librarians had an episode where they actually used the ball of string to get out of a situation. Mm-hmm. They had to follow the string back.
Minotaur also appears in the first book in the Percy Jackson The Olympians series. He battles and is killed by Percy Jackson. He is reborn and appears in the 5th book.
Okay.
Yeah. I haven't read those books. But anyway, there's also a Netflix series called Dark that alludes to the myth of Theseus and the Minotaur. There's a bunch of board and video games as well. The popular role-playing game Dungeons & Dragons features Minotaurs, of course. Got a Dungeons & Dragons book right here in front of me that I'm using as a table.
Minecraft has Minotaurs in it.
Yes. That is true. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, Minecraft does. In Minecraft, you can go into the Twilight Forest and fight a Minotaur in the swamp.
Yeah, there's a labyrinth that you, Yeah.
There's Assassin's Creed Odyssey. And there's a mission where the main character visits the ruins of the Palace of Knossos in order to kill the Minotaur in the Labyrinth of the Lost Souls. The video game Hades that came out last year by Supergiant Games. The protagonist defeats the Minotaur in Elysium. Elysium?
Yep, I believe so.
Where he fights beside Theseus.
So most pop culture references are to do with the Minotaur, right?
Yeah. Honestly, that's most I could find about anything was about the Minotaur.
Well,
there is more things, but Daedalus and Icarus.
Yes.
But the thing is, it's always the same story with them.
Yeah.
And the Minotaur comes in different forms in different places, and it's always a bull man.
Yeah.
But it always ends up just being you're in the labyrinth and you're fighting a bull, or you're Icarus and your wings melt and you fall to the sea.
Yeah, I didn't actually describe that part in my. But yeah, Daedalus and Icarus. Daedalus made wax wings for them to escape the tower, and Icarus, the sun, flew too close to the sun, and his wings melted and he fell into the sea and died, and that sea is now called the Icarian Sea, after Icarus.
Right. Oh, another game, Castlevania. It features Minotaurs as enemies, starting in Castlevania Rondo of Blood.
Okay.
2002 Ensemble Studios real-time strategy game Age of Mythology. Minotaurs can be trained and utilized in combat by Greek players who choose to worship Athena.
Ooh.
Yeah. Now you got a new game you got to try.
Yep.
And there's some movies that have Minotaurs, of course. Believe it or not, documentaries. Not about Minotaurs, but about Minos and Crete. Hercules in the Maze of the Minotaur is one of the TV movie pilots for the television series Hercules, The Legendary Journeys. Sinbad and the Eye of the Tiger was directed by Sam Wanamaker. Peter Mayhew, Chewbacca, it's another Star Wars reference, played the Minotaur in his first role in 1976.
That's cool.
Yeah. Wonder Woman Bloodlines is a film in the DC animated movie universe that features a Minotaur. But of course, she's Greek, because she's an Amazonian.
Well, yeah, she's Diana, a god, like she's a goddess.
But
yes.
So Greek. Yeah.
Yep.
Sinbad and the Minotaur is a film released in 2011. And if anyone, I'll write some of these films and games down in the show notes afterwards, because we've had some feedback, and apparently that's one of the things that people want to know is more of these things that I talk about. So I will do that. And honestly, I'll write down a bunch of other things too, but mostly I'm just going to go over from now on just the things that most people are going to understand a little bit more, rather than trying to find all the references everywhere, because things are getting really in depth.
Yeah, there's a lot for some of these topics.
Yeah, so but yeah, that's mostly what I found for that stuff. So
yeah, that's a decent amount. So,
yeah.
Well, so if you like this episode, and we're assuming since you made it to the end that you do, please like and subscribe. You can also see we post some pictures related to the episode on our Instagram, and you can also give us feedback and suggestions for future topics at our email at diggingdeeperwiththeancients, all one word. And that is our Instagram and email.
And diggingdeeperwiththeancients@gmail.com. Right. Yeah. So thanks for listening, and have a great day.